The Beast of Tuksa, written by Trent Kanuga and Elizabeth Moon. Chapter 4. The Book. The drizzle had erupted into a full-blown downpour. It dragged my butt closer to the front entrance. Barty whimpered and covered his eyes with his paws. "Did you hear that?" "What do you think, Barty?" "I know he said to stay put, but what if he's in trouble? Shouldn't we investigate?" I ignored the shake of his head. The muffled noise from the inside was hard to identify even to my sharp, pointy ears, as the steady drumming of the rain drowned out all sound. "I'll take your silence as a yes." I smiled and blinked in his direction as I got to my feet. I hadn't learned to wink yet, but a blink was close enough. He knew what I meant. "We're only going in for a second, just to make sure." I hopped in the room, fell a couple of feet, and landed on the ceiling or floor or whatever it was. I reached out and dragged our things in from the rain. Barty reluctantly hopped in as well. He shook the water off of his wet fur, flinging it all over the antique portraits of old men and paintings of fields. Was it the paintings or the walls themselves that were upside down? I couldn't decide. With each step, the boards creaked, and I cringed. I'd hoped not to make so much noise, but that was impossible. This place is amazing, I thought. True, it was a little bit odd, but the place was stuffed with relics and thingamajigs. There's so much to look at, I don't even know where to start. I glanced around, eyes wide, and then caught Bartol's look of a doggy concern. "I know. We'll go and look for Oliff to see if he needs any help," I reassured him, but my curiosity tugged at me. We followed Oliff footprints through the dust. As we entered the room in the back, something caught my eye. A strange book atop a pedestal glowed with a faint and mesmerizing light. A gentle blue gleam swirled around it, as if the power of a slow-moving inferno were contained within it. I couldn't pull my eyes away. The book was rather large and lay wide open on a pedestal that hung down. As I approached, words began to form on the empty pages in glowing cursive text. Then a whisper. The bright word appeared on the page. "Ask," I read aloud. Below that, and covering half of the page in blue runes, a large triangular shape pulsed with light. Its design was similar to the shape I'd seen on the front door of the cabin. My eyes remained fixed on the book, as Barty nudged me on my back. "Here goes nothing," I said as I stacked some books in a pile in order to reach it. "Eek!" squealed a little black creature, barreling toward me, but before he could reach me, Bartol leapt, slamming down his massive furry paws onto the creature's puffed cotton ball tail. I climbed down and picked up the little guy. He was covered in black fur with one long pointy ear bearing a scarred notch and the other flopped over, making him more cute than threatening. His snout was covered with white fur running down under his chin as well as above his eyes, the inside of his ears, and on the cheeks that flared out into tufts. Strangely, he was dressed in a red coat with rolled sleeves obviously worn with age. "Huh? Where'd you come from, little guy?" "Don't tell me you're the beast everyone's so afraid of," I said with a laugh. Unable to free himself, he jumped in place, flailing his arms and squeaking with obvious determined effort. But the soft sounds of chanting brought my attention back to the book. I jumped atop my makeshift ladder again as the foreign words and music filled my ears. I grabbed the podium and my perspective shifted. It was as if I watched myself lift the book from its cradle and closed the pages. The cover had no title, but a protruding skull design crafted of metal that had been strapped to the cover. Its teeth jutted out from its edges, and ornate metalwork encased it into the face of the book, giving it an aura which made me feel for a moment that it was almost alive. Without thinking, I tucked the book in my satchel. All at once, everything that was stuck to the ceiling came crashing down on me. Books, candles, jars, furniture, everything. I jumped off the stack of books and ran to Bartol and the critter. The three of us huddled together tightly. It must have happened in the rest of the cabin, too, as I heard a muffled yell from Oliff along with a giant thud. "Of all the—" As one final book fell on my head, I cringed, imagining what must have occurred in the other rooms. "Mao Tenza?" Oliff roared, but he was quickly interrupted by a low and heavy rumbling from outside. The forest itself had grown to life and began to move. Roots and branches spiraled into the rooms, tugging at the cabin and shaking us around. We braced ourselves under a table, trying to not get tossed or knocked over. Books and furniture went flying, jars crashing and shattering. Bartol barely held on by his teeth. All at once, everything had stopped, and I spotted Oliff under the doorway, relaxing his grip and glaring at me. He stood there with a hard, stern look, not saying a word. "Did you feel that earthquake?" I hurriedly asked. "I thought I told you to stay put." "Both of you." "And who is that?" Oliff asked, catching sight of our new companion. "Well," I barely moved my mouth. "I thought you were calling out to me." Oh, really? Is that what you have to say for yourself? I thought you were calling out to me, he mimicked sarcastically. Flimsy excuse for a kid with extraordinary sense of hearing. Now what did you do? The little wood elf scurried over and Oliff gently picked him up with his hands. He proceeded to excitedly let out a series of clicks and squeaks. I quickly ran out from under cover and glared at the little tattletale dancing around and pantomiming a folding book with his hands, and then pointing at his back, then pointing back to me. The little weasel was trying to sell me out. Without looking back at Oliff, I yelled back, "What makes you think I did anything? Why are you always blaming me?" That'll put it back at him. If I fess up to taking the book, he'll make me give it back. Besides, Oliff has secret books too. Why can't I? So you didn't touch or move anything? He asked accusingly. I was just what? Oliff inquired as he rubbed the back of his neck. I followed his eyes as he scanned the cabin, then looked back at me, squinting intensely. Shouldn't we be discussing more important things? Like figuring out what we're going to do tonight? I deflected. Oliff ignored my question. Notice how the rain hadn't dripped inside at all earlier? Now it's leaking through the roof, or floor, or whatever. It's like, I don't know, it's like the barrier that surrounded this place ain't there no more. Then he looked at me. Now what could have done a thing like that? Thunder roared outside, rain slapped against the windows as it poured through the holes in the walls. Does seem that way, I said, locking eyes with the creature in Oliff's hand. He shyly looked down, as if not wanting to add to the tension in the room. Oliff studied me for what felt like forever. I stood silently and didn't respond. What could I possibly say that wouldn't make him madder or trigger more questions? Forget it. Doesn't seem like I'll be getting any answers from you, he muttered, putting the creature down, then throwing his hands in the air. Might as well get comfy, gentlemen. We're not going anywhere till this storm lets up. There's got to be a better place than this room. Just look around. I'm not sleeping in here with broken glass, dead animals, and body bits all over the place. I protest. Oliff surveyed the room. Shattered glass bits and pieces of unidentifiable flesh, a dusty robe and hat, and broken furniture lay everywhere. He kicked a small pile of rubble away to clear a space. Then he wiped his beard and heaved a sigh. Well, it's not likely the old wizard's coming back from the dead, gesturing at the pile of robes. The little guy ran over, grabbed a corner of the robe, and rocked back and forth. Hey, little guy, was that old wizard your friend? I inquired, sensing its pain. He nodded, then said, Amiku, pointing at himself. Oh, so the little guy can understand us, Oliff interjected. What is this place? Is there somewhere we can get some rest for the night? Amiku pointed, then scurried off to a doorway between the various bookshelves and bounced excitedly. As I began to follow Amiku's lead, Oliff stuck out his hand to block me. He looked at me suspiciously. You don't think you awoke some ancient curse with your meddling, do you? Angering the old pack-rat wizard might have consequences. Oliff was trying to scare us into spilling the beans. I could tell. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything, I demanded. You were supposed to stay outside, Oliff insisted. You never let me do anything, I yelled back at him. I wish we were never even... I turned away and walked into the only room that wasn't disturbed by the chaos. Never even what? Oliff demanded. Never mind. I stopped, bit my lip, unbuckled my pack, and slammed it on the ground for effect. No point in talking about the past. Yeah, I wish we never did too, Oliff whispered to himself.